Good morning. Today, I'm going to help you use this graphic organizer for today's assignment. Your assignment is making a character argument. Which characters are the most important and why? But remember, we don't just say characters are important because we like them. They have to hold an importance in developing the plot and developing the lesson that the author wants you to learn. So in order to establish the most important characters, we first have to establish a central idea. Now, there can be multiple central ideas that run throughout a text. So please don't feel limited to the one that I'm going to model. But one of the main central ideas in the color purple is that when people find their voice, they are able to confront what has oppressed them. Okay, so this is a very general central idea, but it definitely works. So now for my claim, which two characters are the most important in developing this central idea? So the way that this graphic organizer is set up is I have given you prompts that you can use as sentence stems. So please use them. So here, which two characters are the most important in developing this central idea? We're going to use that. The two characters that are the most important in developing this central idea are, well, I think personally, in regards to my central idea in this model, I think Shug and Celie are the best characters to show this central idea of finding their voice and confronting their oppressor. So when you're structuring an argument, it's important to understand that the way you put things in order are important. So if I have two characters that are important, the second character or the last one that I mentioned should be the one that is the most important. So if I look at Shug and I look at Celie, I think that Celie is the most important. So I'm going to start with Shug. So the two characters that are the most important in developing a central idea are Shug and Celie. The reason why you want to end with the strongest character is because you want to end your argument with a bang. You don't want to end weak, you want to end strong. Okay, so I'm going to go over how this is set up. This is one little paragraph. This is going to be your next paragraph. This section right here, these are all the sentence stems or transitions I've offered as guidelines as to how to fill out your writing portion. Feel free to copy and paste what I've provided. Some things you may have to change up some of the language, but some of them literally you can copy and paste. So here, character number one of the most important characters in the color purple is, I'm going to Control C, Control V, and I set up here, I'm going to start with the weaker of the two characters that I'm putting in my argument. Now, evidence. You can say, for example, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it in here. Now you can see I have my quotation marks already, and you're going to fill in the page number. So what you'll do is you'll put your textual evidence in right here. Now, this is the analysis. You are not going to bullet or number 1, 2, 3. These are just guidelines or steps that any good analysis should take. So the first step is to summarize the event or what is happening at this part of the story. You have to remember that your audience has never read this book or ever seen this movie. You have to tell them what's going on. So say I give a quote here when Shug finally talks to her father and begins to rebuild their relationship. Obviously, I would go back and find a piece of evidence that supports this idea, but now I'm going to summarize. So I can use this right here as my sentence stem. So I'm going to begin with, what is happening at this point in the story is that Shug and her father have not had any relationship because he never approved of her behavior. Because remember, Shug traveled, she was kind of promiscuous, she was kind of a crazy girl. What is happening at this point in the story is that Shug and her father have not had any relationship because he never approved of her behavior. But in the end, Shug approaches her father to prove she is a good person. This is very vague, but all right. So what is so important about this character? What is he or she saying, doing, thinking, the effect he or she has on others, or how he or she looks? You're going to characterize this person and why she, Shug, is so important. And remember, we're talking about finding voice and confronting their oppressor. So I'm going to use this sentence stem. Shug is so important because throughout the story, she has always wanted to have a relationship with her father, but she never had the courage to prove that she was a moral person. Because remember, the problem her father has with her is that they don't share the same morals or the same ideals, but really they do. Her father just doesn't see it. And Shug doesn't have the courage to tell him, hey, listen to me, I'm a good person. So I've said, let's review. Shug is so important because throughout the story, she has always wanted to have a relationship with her father, but she never had the courage to prove that she was a moral person. Okay. But in the end, Shug realizes that, what does she realize? Well, let's say Shug realizes through her relationship with Seely that what does she realize? Well, I think I think Shug always knew that she was a good person, but deep down she questioned herself. And I think through her relationship with Seely, she realizes that she shouldn't question herself. So, but in the end, Shug realizes through her relationship with Seely that she shouldn't question herself and who she is. Good. So now finally, how does the characterization of this person help the reader understand the message that Alice Walker is trying to teach the audience? Or how does this character develop the central idea? Well, our central idea here, when people find their voice, they are able to confront what has oppressed them. Okay, so I want to make sure I say this central idea. I'm actually going to copy it. And then I'm going to look at this sentence down. This character helps develop the central idea that, and I paste, when people find their voice, they're able to confront what has oppressed them, because once Shug realizes her own worth, she is able to confidently approach her father and tell him show him who she really is. So this is a lot. So I just wanted to show you how I use the sentence stems to build my analysis. So if you look here, what is happening at this point in the story is that is number 1. Shug is so important because throughout the story, that is number 2. Shug helps develop the central idea that is number 3. So you're going to do this again for a second character. I've offered different sentence stems to give you a variety. So here, but the most important character in the color purple is, and then I would say Seelie. And then here, a possible transition, Seelie's importance can be seen when, and you put in another piece of evidence. But these remain the same. So you will do this exact same thing, but for Seelie's character. Okay, if you want to pause this video to 1, absorb, use, adapt this, you may. Go ahead and pause and come back when you're ready. I'm not going to do this for Seelie. So if you want to remain paused until you do all of this, and then you repeat the process for another character, stay paused. But do not forget to come back, because what I'm going to go over next is the most important part in an argument. Okay, you're back. So you can make a great argument. You can argue, and prove your point. But if you don't think about what the other people are going to say or what the other side is going to say, then you may sound silly. Because if somebody comes at you with a great argument as to why they're right and you're wrong, and you have nothing to say back, all of a sudden, they just won the argument. So this is where we bring in the counterclaim and the rebuttal. These terms may be familiar to you because we do this exact process with the argumentative essay. So some people may think that blank is one of the most important characters in the color purple, because once you finish this assignment, you're going to have a discussion or debate with your peers. And you better be prepared to refute or argue against what somebody else might say. So some people might think that Sophie is one of the most important characters because, I don't know, what might somebody say? Somebody might say something like, she always stands up to her oppressors and never let anyone treat her less than her worth. So Sophie, throughout the majority of the text, stands up to any racial inequalities, any gender inequalities. She stands up to her husband and wants to be treated as an equal in the relationship. She stands up to white people think, establishing her equality. So she may be considered, a very important character in some people's eyes. So now we have to come back and argue why she is not an important character. So the sentence down here, while this character may be in the story, he or she is not important because, so I'm going to say, while Sophie may be in the story, she is not the most important character in understanding the story's central idea because, and remember, the central idea I'm working with, when people find their voice, they are able to confront what has oppressed them. Well, for my central idea, she is not the most important character because she is a tragic character. She falls, basically. She ends up spending 12 years of her life raising white people's children, and she loses her voice and she loses who she is. She is not able to confront her oppressors throughout the majority of her life because of her tragic flaw, her hubris, which is, excessive pride. Now, does she have excessive pride? I think that's debatable because she stands up for herself and who she is, and she has a voice. But unfortunately, this voice is what ended up ruining the majority of her life. So in regards to this central idea, Sophie is not an important character. So while Sophie may be in the story, she is not the most important character in understanding the story's central idea because her voice was lost. She stood up to her oppressors and eventually it ruined the majority of her life. She lost her voice and was no longer able to confront her demons. Okay, so just as a review, first you have to establish the message. Then you pick the two characters that you feel are the strongest characters to show this message. The second one should be the stronger of the two examples. Here I've provided guidelines, sentence stems, and transition words for you to use. Here is an example. You will repeat this process for another character, and then do not forget to think about what somebody on the other side would say. So in class, you are ready to argue why they are wrong and you are still right. Remember, a good argument says, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. But a great argument says, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. I already know what you're going to say. So let me tell you, well, you're still wrong and I'm still